Today, we're traveling back to 1987 to uncover a tragedy that shook the world. This story, more thrilling than any movie, left the entire globe holding its breath. A Korean air flight bound for Bangkok mysteriously vanished without a trace. Following a meticulous investigation, it was revealed that this was a conspiracy involving two nations. The person behind the plot ultimately became a sacrificial pawn, and the mystery of their identity captivated public attention. What really happened on that ill-fated flight? What earth-shattering secrets was this mysterious individual hiding? In 1988, South Korea secured the honor of hosting the 24th Summer Olympics. As we know, hosting the Olympics is not just a testament to a nation's capabilities, but also a catalyst for its political, economic, and cultural development. The 24th Summer Olympics were scheduled to take place in Seoul, South Korea, from September 17th to October 2nd, 1988. At the time, athletes and visitors from around the world were expected to arrive, promising a vibrant and celebratory atmosphere. South Korea was making every effort to prepare for this monumental event. However, a terrifying conspiracy was quietly unfolding alongside these preparations. On October 29, 1987, Korean Air Flight 858, operated by South Korea's largest airline, departed from Baghdad, Iraq, with its final destination set for Seoul. Along the way, the flight was scheduled to stop at two locations: Abu Dhabi, the capital of the United Arab Emirates, and Bangkok, Thailand. The plane landed safely in Abu Dhabi, where 15 passengers disembarked. After a short layover, the aircraft continued its journey toward Bangkok. At this point, there were 104 passengers and 11 crew members on board. Aside from one foreign passenger, the remaining 114 individuals were South Korean nationals, most of whom were laborers working abroad. Tragically, these 115 people would never reach their destination. At approximately 2 p.m., while flying over the Andaman Sea, the plane suddenly vanished. Just before its disappearance, the aircraft had entered Myanmar's air traffic control zone. The pilot had contacted Myanmar's air traffic controllers, reporting an altitude of 37,000 feet and normal conditions, with the flight expected to arrive in Bangkok on time. However, in a strange turn of events, shortly after this communication, the aircraft disappeared from radar screens while flying over waters about 137 miles south of Yangon. Don Mueang Airport in Bangkok, expecting Flight 858, never received it and immediately notified South Korean authorities. Initially, South Korea underestimated the gravity of the situation. They speculated that the plane might have experienced technical issues and made an emergency landing somewhere near Myanmar. Since the aircraft's signal was lost within Myanmar's airspace, Thailand and Myanmar launched a coordinated search and rescue operation. This assumption wasn't entirely unreasonable. After all, Flight 858 was a Boeing 707, an aircraft that had been in service for 16 years, and it had a history of technical issues. Just 2 months before the plane's disappearance, Flight 858 encountered a serious issue while landing at Gimpo Airport in Seoul. The landing gear failed to deploy in time, forcing the aircraft to stay airborne until it ran out of fuel and then land on its fuselage. This incident caused significant damage to the plane, but it was successfully repaired. If the plane experienced another malfunction this time, requiring an emergency landing or resulting in a crash, finding it would be extremely difficult. Based on the flight route, dense forests near Myanmar, surrounding seas and islands were all potential crash sites. The search area was vast. Rescue teams deployed helicopters to search the forests, seas, and islands along the Myanmar coastline, but found nothing. This raised suspicions among some people. Perhaps the plane hadn't experienced a technical malfunction. Think about it. If there had been a problem, the crew would have had enough time to contact Thai or Myanmar authorities and send out a distress signal. Yet, the plane abruptly lost contact without any warning. South Korea then informed the media that the possibility of a hijacking could not be ruled out. After all, such incidents had precedent. In 1969, a Korean airplane was hijacked by North Korean agents and forced to land in North Korea. Years later, North Korea returned the plane and a few of the passengers. However, this was merely speculation from South Korea, as no concrete evidence had been found. South Korea continued to cooperate with Myanmar and Thailand to search the waters where the plane might have crashed. During the investigation, Interpol learned that the plane had made a brief stop in Abu Dhabi, where 15 passengers disembarked. Could one of them have done something to the aircraft? At the time, relations between North and South Korea were tense. Could a North Korean agent have infiltrated among those 15 passengers? Abu Dhabi police provided a crucial lead. 2 suspicious passengers had disembarked from Flight 858 in Abu Dhabi. They were identified as a 69-year-old man named Mayumi Hachiya and his 27-year-old daughter Shinichi Hachiya, traveling with Japanese passports. There were 2 reasons these individuals aroused suspicion. First, their flight itinerary. Their tickets indicated that they had flown from Baghdad to Abu Dhabi. After disembarking in Abu Dhabi, they immediately took another flight to Bahrain. This route was clearly a detour. Moreover, upon arriving at Bahrain airport, they purchased tickets for a flight to Rome. For a typical tourist, this itinerary was excessively rushed. Second, their identities. Airport police in Bahrain, acting cautiously, confiscated their passports and contacted the Japanese embassy in Bahrain to verify their authenticity. The results confirmed a problem. Their passports were fake. Mayumi and Shinichi Hachiya were real individuals, but the actual people with those identities had never left Japan. South Korea immediately sent investigators to Bahrain and located the 2 Japanese nationals at a hotel. However, due to the lack of concrete evidence and the fact that the incident occurred in a foreign country, the meeting yielded no useful leads, only basic information. Before leaving, South Korean police told the pair they would return the next day. Feeling the weight of suspicion, the 2 Japanese nationals didn't dare stay in Bahrain. Early the next morning, they checked out of their hotel and took a taxi to Bahrain airport, attempting to flee. However, staff from the Japanese embassy were already waiting at the airport. They informed authorities that Shinichi's plane ticket was fake and that she needed to be investigated. The 2 individuals were subsequently detained by airport police. A search of their carry-on luggage revealed nothing suspicious. During interrogation, both individuals simultaneously requested cigarettes. They then took out the cigarettes they had brought with them. This seemingly normal act didn't raise any alarms with investigators, but as soon as they put the cigarettes in their mouths, something shocking occurred. After Mayumi bit the filter of his cigarette, he immediately began convulsing and collapsed. Shinichi reacted slightly slower. Police quickly recognized that something was wrong and removed the cigarette from her mouth, but it was too late. Shinichi also collapsed. It became clear they had ingested poison. The rapid onset of symptoms indicated this was no ordinary poison, but a highly potent and fast-acting one. Authorities rushed both individuals to the hospital. Mayumi was pronounced dead, but Shinichi, perhaps because she bit the filter slightly later and police intervened quickly, survived. At the time, South Korean authorities merely suspected these 2 Japanese passengers and had no concrete evidence linking them to the disappearance of Flight 858. However, their actions only deepened suspicions. After regaining consciousness, Shinichi repeatedly attempted to bite her tongue or hold her breath to end her life but failed each time. Both Bahraini and South Korean police agreed that it was imperative to keep Shinichi alive because she likely held the key to unraveling a major conspiracy. Shinichi, still in fragile health, was placed under 24-hour surveillance and strict protection. A few days later, when her condition improved, she was brought in for questioning. Initially, she remained silent, but eventually she revealed her true identity. Speaking fluently in Mandarin, Shinichi said, "I am actually Chinese. I was born on January 27, 1964. My real name is Kim Hyun-hee. I was born in Wuchang City, Heilongjiang Province, China. I'm an orphan with no siblings. My parents died when I was young, and I was raised by my grandmother. Later, I wandered to Macau. There, I met an elderly Japanese man named Mayumi. He treated me very kindly and adopted me. Eventually, I moved to Japan with him and changed my name to Shinichi. Since I didn't have residency papers in Japan, I was afraid to go anywhere. Every year, I would only travel with my adoptive father, and this time was no different. The disappearance of Flight 858 has nothing to do with us. As she spoke about the hardships in her life, she broke down in tears. However, the investigators were not swayed by her beauty or her emotional display, as her testimony contained numerous suspicious elements. To verify Shinichi's claims, Bahraini authorities enlisted the help of an Englishwoman named Camilla, who was fluent in Mandarin. Camilla spoke Cantonese fluently as well. With her assistance, investigators uncovered several inconsistencies in Shinichi's story. First, at that time, China didn't have a city named Wuchang, only a county by that name existed. Furthermore, when asked about local specialties and the living environment of her so-called hometown, Shinichi couldn't answer. Another suspicious detail was that, although Shinichi spoke Cantonese fluently, she claimed to have forgotten the northeastern dialect native to her alleged hometown. Despite intensive questioning by Bahraini police, no additional information could be obtained, so they decided to hand Shinichi over to South Korea. On December 15, 1987, Shinichi was flown to Gimpo Airport in South Korea. To ensure her safety, South Korean authorities used a private aircraft for her transport. Upon landing, Shinichi was tightly restrained by security officers who held her arms firmly to prevent any suicide attempts. Her mouth was also covered. Within moments, the story of this mysterious and beautiful North Korean spy dominated headlines across South Korea. People who saw photos of Shinichi couldn't comprehend why someone so stunning would choose to become a spy. Shinichi was subsequently taken to an underground interrogation facility in Namsan, on the outskirts of Seoul. She stuck to her original story, insisting her name was Hyun-hee, that she was from Wuchang, China, and that she didn't understand any Korean. She argued that this alone proved she couldn't possibly be a North Korean spy. When investigators spoke to her in Korean, her reaction suggested she genuinely didn't understand. However, South Korean authorities suspected that the young spy possessed exceptional psychological training. Her decisive suicide attempt following her exposure hinted at strong mental fortitude. Thus, they believed her claims of not understanding Korean were likely an act. To test their theory, South Korean investigators implemented a series of subtle tactics. First, when Shinichi placed her hands on the table, an officer casually remarked to a colleague in Korean, "Look at those long, delicate fingers. Definitely the hands of a well-trained spy." Upon hearing this, Shinichi instinctively withdrew her hands, an action the investigators immediately noted. Next, the officers told jokes in Korean in Shinichi's presence. Outwardly, she appeared unmoved, likely due to her professional training that dictated she must not react. However, she later excused herself to use the restroom, turned on the faucet, and burst out laughing, using the sound of running water to mask her laughter. So much for not understanding Korean. Finally, the investigators feigned casual curiosity and asked, "What brand of TV do you use at home?" Without hesitation, she responded, "Kim Il-sung," a mispronunciation of Kim Darce. This slip was telling. Kim Darce televisions were exclusively manufactured in North Korea at the time. While South Korea exposed Shinichi's lies, she stubbornly refused to admit the truth. South Korea found themselves in a dilemma. Resorting to coercive measures would surely draw international condemnation. Moreover, as a trained spy, Shinichi was likely impervious to any form of torture. After careful consideration, South Korean authorities decided to take a completely different approach. Instead of resorting to torture, they gave Shinichi significant freedom. She was allowed to watch TV, read newspapers, and even tour various places in Seoul, though she was always accompanied by security personnel. As she walked through bustling Seoul, she was struck by the vibrant streets, endless rows of goods, streams of vehicles, towering skyscrapers, and the lively nightlife. She also noticed how South Koreans dressed stylishly in colorful clothing. This scene completely overturned her perception of the world. For years, Shinichi had been taught that South Korea was controlled by foreign capitalists, where people lived in misery, often lacking enough food and clothing, with streets filled with beggars. However, the reality she witnessed forced her to acknowledge that everything she had been told for the past 15 years was a massive lie. Now, for the first time, she saw the true South Korea. After 8 days of experiencing life firsthand, her deeply ingrained beliefs began to waver. On the evening of December 23, 1987, Shinichi confessed to all her crimes and revealed everything to South Korean investigators. Late that night, she admitted that her real name was Kim Hyun-hee, and her alias was Kim Ok-hwa. Her accomplice, Mayumi, was actually named Kim Seung-il, with the alias Kim Soon-il. They were both North Korean spies. She revealed that the disappearance of Korean Air Flight 858 was their doing. They had planted a time bomb on the plane, which later detonated and destroyed the aircraft. The motive behind North Korea's plan was to use the bombing to intimidate nations participating in the Seoul Olympics, thereby preventing the event from taking place. This would create an opportunity for North Korea to pursue its goal of unifying the Korean peninsula. At this point, the truth behind Flight 858's disappearance was fully revealed. The plane had been bombed and had crashed into the sea. Search teams from South Korea, Thailand, and Myanmar later recovered numerous fragments of the aircraft. On the morning of January 15, 1988 at 9 a.m., South Korea held a public press conference to announce the findings of the investigation. They confirmed that Korean Air Flight 858 had been destroyed by a time bomb over the Andaman Sea, resulting in the deaths of all 115 people on board. Shinichi, or Kim Hyun-hee, was also brought to the press conference. Police declared that she was one of the main perpetrators of the Flight 858 bombing, and that she was a North Korean agent named Hyun-hee. Covering her face in shame, she admitted her guilt. After her statement, Hyun-hee stood, bowed deeply, and apologized to the reporters and the families of the victims. Her confession left everyone at the press conference, including the victims' families, utterly stunned. The investigation results announced by South Korea sent shockwaves around the globe, placing North Korea at the center of international criticism. In response to these accusations, North Korea categorically denied any involvement, dismissing claims of orchestrating the bombing or the existence of a female spy. Moreover, North Korea retaliated by accusing South Korea of fabricating the entire incident to frame North Korea or for some undisclosed ulterior motive. In truth, North Korea's argument wasn't entirely baseless, as some of South Korea's actions following the incident raised questions. For example, their approach to locating the wreckage and the plane's black box was puzzling. It's well known that even when a plane crashes into the ocean, the black box can emit a tracking signal for up to 30 days, providing a critical window for recovery. Yet, South Korea's search efforts lasted just over 2 weeks before they declared the search suspended, citing the difficulty of recovery due to the aircraft being shattered into many pieces, the wide debris field, and the depth of the crash site, which reportedly reached up to 9,800 feet. However, it was later proven that much of the wreckage lay at depths of only about 165 feet. Additionally, sources revealed that South Korea possessed specialized black box detection equipment, but chose not to use it. Furthermore, South Korea showed little interest in debris from Flight 858 found by other nations, almost as if they were uninterested in uncovering the truth behind the disaster. Beyond this passive attitude, another striking coincidence fueled skepticism. The day after Hyun-hee was brought back to South Korea, December 16, 1987, marked the 13th presidential election in South Korea. The timing of these two events was so close that many couldn't help but wonder if the airline tragedy was linked to the election. Consider this. If North Korea were indeed behind the attack, it would undoubtedly provoke strong anti-North Korea sentiment among South Koreans. In such a climate, voters would likely rally behind a hardline candidate representing the military government, Roh Tae-woo. His election would be perceived as crucial for ensuring national security. As it turned out, Roh Tae-woo was elected as South Korea's 13th president, an extraordinary coincidence. This led some to question whether North Korea had been wrongly accused. However, this view was shared by only a small fraction of the population. The majority firmly believed that Hyun-hee was a North Korean spy, and that the Flight 858 bombing was indeed orchestrated by North Korea. Despite this, Hyun-hee's trial was postponed as South Korea prepared for the upcoming Summer Olympics. The 1988 Summer Olympics in Seoul faced several challenges, including boycotts by some nations, but the event ultimately went ahead and concluded successfully. On March 9, 1989, Kim Hyun-hee's trial finally began. On March 27th, South Korea declared her guilty of orchestrating the Flight 858 bombing, which killed 115 people. She was convicted of violating South Korea's National Security Act, aviation laws, and civil safety regulations, and was sentenced to death. Despite the sentence, the date of her execution was not immediately determined. On April 12, 1990, after Roh Tae-woo assumed the presidency, he unexpectedly exercised his presidential authority to pardon Hyun-hee. The rationale was that Hyun-hee was not the mastermind behind the bombing, but rather an innocent victim of manipulation. In reality, the true reason Hyun-hee was pardoned was that she was the sole witness who could counter claims that the incident had been staged. Keeping her alive was more advantageous for South Korea and also served as a way to irritate North Korea. Though pardoned, Hyun-hee had nowhere to go. She didn't dare leave South Korea, as North Korea would certainly reject her. With no other options, Hyun-hee continued living in South Korea. Concerned for her safety, South Korean authorities assigned personnel to protect her. From the outside, Hyun-hee appeared beautiful and innocent, with no trace of the cruelty one might expect from someone who caused such a heinous crime. Her tearful display during the press conference even evoked sympathy from many. Despite being responsible for the bombing that claimed 115 lives, many South Koreans chose to forgive her. She even developed a following of admirers in South Korea. Naturally, people became curious about how she became a spy. Hyun-hee was born on January 27, 1962, in Pyongyang, North Korea. Her father was a diplomat, and her mother was a teacher. Her family enjoyed relatively privileged circumstances in North Korea at the time. However, when she was a year old, her father was sent to Cuba for work, and Hyun-hee spent 5 years of her childhood there. After her father's assignment ended, the family returned to Pyongyang. Even in elementary school, Kim Hyun-hee was strikingly beautiful. She caught the attention of a film producer and acted in 2 movies, becoming a child star. She was later chosen as a flower girl to present bouquets to a South Korean delegation. After graduating high school, Hyun-hee was admitted to the biology department at Kim Il-sung University, one of North Korea's most prestigious universities. However, her time there didn't go smoothly. On her father's advice, she transferred to Pyongyang University of Foreign Studies, a decision that would completely change her life. In her second year at Pyongyang University of Foreign Studies at age 18, Hyun-hee was recruited by the North Korean government for spy training thanks to her remarkable appearance. She was given the alias Kim Ok-hwa and began secret training in a building on the outskirts of Pyongyang. During training, her identity was kept strictly confidential. She was forbidden to leave the building during the day, and at night, she could only walk within the premises while wearing sunglasses and a mask to prevent anyone from recognizing her. In addition to military skills, language training was a mandatory part of her preparation as a spy. She was required to learn South Korean dialects, given the tense relationship between North and South Korea at the time. She also studied Japanese, English, and Chinese. Her Japanese instructor was Lee Hyun-hee, a Tokyo native. Tragically, Lee Hyun-hee was actually Yaiko Taguchi, a Japanese woman who had been kidnapped by North Korean agents. Taguchi's story was heartbreaking. After graduating high school, she married and had 2 children, a son and a daughter. She lived a happy life until one day, while playing with her children on the beach, she was abducted by North Korean operatives and taken to North Korea. Forced to teach Japanese to Hyun-hee, Taguchi reluctantly complied, holding on to the hope that one day she might return to Japan and reunite with her children. 4 years later, after undergoing rigorous selection and training, Hyun-hee became an exceptional operative. She was fluent in Japanese, Korean, English, and Cantonese, and mastered military skills such as martial arts, firearms, and explosives. At the time, Hyun-hee was proud of her achievements as a spy, unaware of the fate that awaited her. In July 1984, Kim Hyun-hee officially began her assignments. Her partner was a veteran agent with the alias Kim Seung-il. Despite his advanced age, he was highly experienced and considered one of the most outstanding operatives in the history of North Korea's intelligence agency. Her first mission was primarily a test to build her real-world experience and was not particularly dangerous. The objective was to infiltrate several countries across Europe and Asia to gather intelligence. Hyun-hee and Kim Seung-il posed as a Japanese father and daughter traveling together. Using fake Japanese passports, Hyun-hee adopted the alias Shinichi Hachiya, while Kim Seung-il used the alias Mayumi Hachiya. After completing their mission in Europe, Hyun-hee and Kim Seung-il were ordered to separate. Hyun-hee was sent alone to China, an opportunity to test her ability to handle situations independently. She successfully completed this challenge. To further improve her Cantonese, Hyun-hee stayed in Macau for 6 months. In 1987, Hyun-hee was given her first major mission, and it would also be her last as a spy, orchestrating the attack on Korean Air Flight 858. After her release, Hyun-hee spent many years living in South Korea. Initially, her life was far from easy. Some saw her as a murderer, and there were even people who cursed her in public. Fortunately, no one attempted to harm her physically. Hyun-hee endured all of this in silence. During her time living discreetly in South Korea, she authored several memoirs, including The Complete Confession of Hyun-hee, Now I Want to Be a Woman, and The Tears of My Soul. In these books, she detailed her upbringing and the events leading to the bombing. These works became bestsellers in Japan and South Korea at the time. Later, a film titled Hyun-hee's Spy Crisis, based on her story, was produced and garnered significant public attention. In December 1997, Kim Hyun-hee secretly married in South Korea. Her husband was one of the security officers assigned to protect her. After their marriage, the couple had 2 children. Thus, the former beautiful North Korean spy transitioned into a quiet life as a homemaker in South Korea. For many years after her marriage, Hyun-hee stayed out of the public eye until 2009, when she reappeared in front of the media. In April 2009, at the request of Japanese officials, high-ranking Japanese representatives secretly met with Hyun-hee in Seoul. Among them was the family of Yaeko Taguchi, a woman abducted by North Korea. Particularly moving was the presence of Yaeko Taguchi's son, who desperately wanted to learn everything about his mother, as she had been taken to North Korea when he was just a child. Hyun-hee revealed that Yaeko Taguchi was still alive. On July 20th, 2010, Hyun-hee received an invitation from Japan. For the first time in many years, she left South Korea and traveled to Japan. During her 4-day visit, she met Yaeko Taguchi's parents and son. On January 15, 2013, Hyun-hee appeared on the South Korean MBC program The Life of Hyun-hee, Confessions of Hyun-hee. The primary purpose of the show was to refute allegations that Hyun-hee was not the perpetrator of the Flight 858 bombing. On the program, Hyun-hee stated, "What I did deserves the death penalty. The reason I am alive, I believe, is because I am the only witness to the acts of terrorism committed by North Korea. Bearing witness to the truth has become my destiny." By this time, the majority of South Koreans had chosen to forgive her, understanding the tragic circumstances of her life. She had never been given the freedom to make her own choices. Though she became a wife and mother living an ordinary life, Hyun-hee remained haunted by the shadows of her past. She lived under the protection of the South Korean government, enduring society's judgmental gaze and carrying the indelible scars of her trauma. When examining Hyun-hee's life, it is difficult to label it as simply right or wrong. She was both a victim of a regime steeped in propaganda and control, and a person stripped of her youth, love, and the ability to choose her own path. She was turned into a weapon, a pawn in the political chess game of nations. The bombing of Flight 858 was not only a tragedy for the 115 innocent victims, but also a tragedy for her life. Ultimately, Kim Hyun-hee's story is a somber reflection on war and division, a tale of people swept up in the whirlwind of hatred and violence. May tragedies like this never happen again. That's the end of today's video. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one. Goodbye.